Tonight, Justice League United finally gives focus to the superhero hotspot that is Canada. Teen Titans is a Best of Scott Lobdell recap, which means that it is a very short issue, and Catwoman had decided that narrative continuity is just a bit too limiting, so she just does whatever the hell she feels like from now on. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 138 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and no intro today. I mean bare bones intro because I got in from my vacation late last night. I guess as of you watching this 2 nights ago. And then I woke up yesterday jet lagged out of my mind. And now I am just trying to get this episode out before the deadline. And I got like 12 hours to do so. So suffice to say, I had a fun vacation. It was a very nice week. I am engaged now. Keep that on the down low. Yeah, I asked my girlfriend of 3 years, and she was happy to say yes. So let that be a lesson that even if you have way too many comic books and are a complete nerd who talks about them alone to himself online, you can still find love. I think that's the moral of that story. Anyway, comics for this week. Got 13 of them and a bunch of special things, so I picked a bad week to be jet lagged. We have, in no particular order here, Catwoman, Batman/Superman, Superman, Larfleeze, Red Lanterns, Aquaman, Flash, All-Star Western, Teen Titans, Justice League Dark, and Batman Eternal as our weekly. But the special things that I skipped over there, we have issue number 1 of Secret Origins, where it is an anthology series, 3 stories of New 52 origins of heroes, villains, whatever, and a 0 issue for Justice League United. What is that? It's Justice League of America sequel series, except it isn't because that book isn't done yet. Additionally, on top of that, Batman/Superman is part 3 of the First Contact crossover with World's Finest. You may remember that part 4 of that came out like 3 weeks ago, so that's confusing and awful. And then I think that's pretty much it. Oh, Teen Titans. Teen Titans, it's its last numbered issue. We have an annual at some point, but yeah, that's the last of that. So yeah. Like I said, as much as I said no intro, I guess that was an intro. Roll comics. Justice League United number 0, written by Jeff Lemire, art by McKone. So, definitely not a sequel book to Justice League of America, but absolutely that. So we open up on a place, moon of Falsala, where there's a bunch of alien scientists doing alien work on other aliens. Like, you know, it seems like genetics, but like illegal stuff, because they're saying like, oh, what we're doing is wrong, blah, blah, blah. And it turns out there's this woman named Alana there. We'll get to that. So we see them prepping this one like baby-looking alien saying, oh, you're going to change the universe. You're going to be so special. And as they're about to inject it with something, the roof crashes in comes Green Arrow, Stargirl, Supergirl, Animal Man, Martian Manhunter, and a new character who we definitely don't know is Adam Strange. So at that point, everyone freaks out. They're just like, oh, Jesus, all that's going nuts. Everybody launch your emergency protocols. And we see the woman Alana runs over and gives Adam a big hug because I guess they know each other. And then all of a sudden, John starts freaking out. Martian Manhunter's just grabbing his head and Stargirl's like, hey, what's happening? And the alien's just like, it worked. You're all too late. And then everyone else starts freaking out. Their heads start hurting. They all start grabbing it. And the little baby thing that they were about to inject causes a giant blast of energy that you can see off the moon itself. So how did we get here? 3 days earlier, Toronto, Canada, there is a Meet Celebrity Superheroes, like, panel or something, and it's got Animal Man and Stargirl, and they're just like shaking hands with people who come up being like, oh, I'm so nervous, you guys are so cool, and they're just like, yeah, totally, great, anyway. And then this man gets to the front of the line, and he's just like, hey, I gotta show you something. And he's just like, oh, okay, you're one of the crazy ones. He's like, no, you gotta understand this. And he starts reaching into his bag, and there's a bouncer nearby, which, like, if you have two superheroes, why do you need a bouncer? But regardless, the bouncer's about to come up, and he's like, oh, it's okay, my name is Dr. Adam Strange, and I need to show you this thing that happened. Nobody else will help me. And Animal Man's like, all right, well, with a name like Adam Strange, sure, let's hear him out. So it turns out he is an anthropologist at the university, and he was there with a grad student out in the snow digging up some bones or something that was found. And as they were digging it, and the grad student was Alana, and as they were digging it, the grad student just disappeared in a beam of light that came down from space. And they're just like, okay, that sounds weird, but like, why didn't you go to like the police or whatever? He's like, yeah, beam of light, that's clearly the police stuff, and it's not like I could just call up the Justice League, so this open panel is the closest I can get to that. So he reaches into the bag and he pulls out this alien looking skull, and it's got like a weird horn on it, and he's like, yeah, see, this is weird, right? I found this in Canada. Nothing weird like that happens in Canada. So then he also pulls out of his bag this mysterious-looking machine, and as he pulls it out, Stargirl's cosmic staff starts doing a little bit of whirring and whizzing and whatnot, and then all of a sudden, they find themselves into a completely different location, and then they teleport back. And they're like, that was weird. Okay, Mr. Strange, we believe you. Take us to this location. So they head to this island out in Canada, and they go back to the dig site, and they're looking over everything that they've got there. And Stargirl manages to piece together based off how Strange is talking, like, hey, your grad student is a bit more than a grad student. Am I right? And he's like, yeah, don't tell nobody. And Animal Man's like, hold on, wait a minute, I smell something in the air. And he uses his animal powers to sniff out further over a ridge where they come across a huge, like, mass grave of even more bones, most of them looking aliens. And then all of a sudden they get fired upon. Stargirl gets knocked down, and there's a bunch of aliens coming around speaking in an alien language, and Animal Man's like, all right, time to take out the trash. But first we cut over to an island in Canada called Moose Factory Island. There's an indigenous tribe there of the Moose Cree, and we meet this young woman named Miyabin, who is very clearly distracted as her friend's trying to talk to her about like some school stuff or whatever. And she's like offering to take her out somewhere, and Miyabin's like, nah, don't worry about it, I gotta get home, see ya. So she walks back home, she finds her front door open, she calls out for her grandmother, and inside there's this random man who's like, hey, Miyabin, is that you? And she's like, I don't know you, get out of my house. And he's like, no, I get it, but like, don't you recognize me? And she says, no, and my grandmother will be here, so you need to leave. She'll call the cops. And he starts freaking out, saying, no, you're the only one who can stop it. And then his mouth gets all grotesquely shaped and like, you know, a snake opening up sort of thing. And he says, the Witago is here. And she freaks out. It sheds the skin of this human coil, turns into a deer skull wearing monster, and it's saying like, oh, you know what you have to do, Miyabin, do it. And she's like, no, I don't want it. She's like, do it. So then all of a sudden she transforms into some sort of superhero. She's got like light-based powers. I'm like 95% sure this is Dr. Light the second, so I'm just going to say Dr. Light until proven otherwise. Yeah, so we see that the Witago has, or I'm calling it the Witago, I don't know if it is, deer skull guy, transforms to look like Miyabin and then suddenly just disappears. And that's when Granny comes in just like, what are you screaming about, girl? And she's like, it's scary. So we cut back over to Adam Strange. He's trying to talk down the aliens. Animal Man's like, dude, what are you doing? They're aliens. And he's like, yeah, and I'm an anthropologist. I study cultures. I can do this. And he's like, we mean you no harm. And then they start shooting again. And so Animal Man and Stargirl, who's up at this point, start getting into a fight. They throw punches. They going nuts. Until finally one of them has Animal Man dead to rights. And all of a sudden, an arrow shows up. And over the ridge comes Green Arrow and Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter says, hey, everybody stand down. And the aliens keep on attacking. And Green Arrow's like, I don't think they understand English. And Martian Manhunter tells them, I put that thought into their brain in their own language, and they're still attacking. So yeah, let's take them out. So all at once they start attacking. For some reason, Animal Man and Green Arrow are like immediately just douchey to each other. Like, Animal Man calls out Green Arrow for, like, wow, foam arrows. I thought you were the most ridiculous member of the JLA, but way to prove me wrong. And then Green Arrow calls out Animal Man by, like, oh, yeah, Animal Man, why don't you transform into, like, a beaver? I could use a nice fur coat. So, at this point, Martian Manhunter, he's like, okay, these guys, they're not a threat. We've taken them out, but we've got to figure out what's going on. And Animal Man's like, wait a minute, hold on. How did you guys even know we were out here? And Stargirl points out, okay, I may have called JLA backups because this seemed to be a little bit out of our depth if this were something like big. And turns out she called the entire JLA. These are the only members who showed up. And Green Arrow was like 50-50 on it. Martian Manhunter's like, yeah, after Forever Evil, the JLA is kind of not a thing anymore. So at this point, Green Arrow stumbles across a patch of fresher snow, and as they brush it off, they discover a hatch where down below are all the aliens we saw from the beginning. And they start running. They're just like, get the failsafe. Everybody hurry. The heroes found us. Let's go. So they start rushing through. But then one of them says, like, oh, our master has something planned for you. And then a loud, like, noise starts up. And Martian Manhunter grabs everybody and just be like, we gotta bail. So they get out of the hatch, and a giant fire demon, like it's a monster made of fire, just comes out of the hatch. And Martian Manhunter's like, okay, I'm going to telepathically shut it down. And then he gets grabbed by the fire monster and just thrown apart. So he's out of the fight. We then go up to space, where on that moon of Thasala, one of the aliens has gone up to their lord and is like, oh, Lord Bith, the heroes on Earth found our base. We managed to get enough done, but like it's kind of a problem now. And Lord Bith is like, which hero found you? Superman, Green Lantern, one of the big ones? And it's like, no, basically a bunch of no names and also Martian Manhunter. He's like, well, Martian Manhunter's, there's no slouch. So yeah, all right, I'll take that. And then he says, all right, well, I think it's time that we disposed of the prisoners if the heroes are coming. And we see Alana is in a cage trying to convince everybody, like, all right, everybody, as we planned, we can do this. And all the prisoners are like, shut up, Alana. No one's going along with your plan. And we see that opening up the cage is New Lobo, the New 52 Lobo. And he's like, I can hear you talking about the plan to rush me. It's stupid and it's not going to work. And Alana's just like, we can take you on, all of us together. And he's like, all right, I'll take that bet. Let's go. But before anything can happen, a dark figure in the crowd emerges and says, like, let me handle this bounty hunter. I'm a Thanagarian war god ready to rip off a Zarnian head. And from the crowd emerges Hawkman. And Lobo's like, all right, I don't mind this fight. And that's where we're going to pick up next time. So here's the thing. This is a zero issue. Why is this a zero issue? I think it's specifically because they didn't want to put out issue number 1 until Justice League of America actually finished. And at the point of this publishing, we're still waiting for the final issue of Justice League of America. So I peeked ahead. I looked at what issue 1 is. Like, could I just jump in on issue 1? No, not at all. It picks up with the Lobo and Hawkman fight. Like, there's no way you could not read issue 0. So I get it, editorial. I see why you did it. But from like a comic reading perspective, 0 should always be optional. 0 should never be a thing that you need to read. Beyond that, it seems like a decent start. It seems like a good start to the plot. You got all this like alien stuff going on. And it's just a couple of heroes that stumbled across it. I will say I'm happy that Jeff Lemire is writing this for the sake that Animal Man is in it. I really liked his Animal Man run, which wrapped up just before this came out. And it left it in a place where I was concerned that Animal Man was showing up in this. So if anyone's going to do it justice, it's going to be the guy who wrote the run where he last showed. Beyond that, everything else, it's mostly just set up, new Lobos, whatever, but we'll get to see what he's actually doing there to begin with. I'm going to say this is I'll give it a 7.5. It's promising. It's not great on its own, but it's got some threads that I wouldn't mind seeing explored down the road. Secret Origins #1, written by, I'll get to it as I cover each story, because this is an anthology book that has 3 different origins for the New 52 versions of heroes and villains. This issue we have Superman, Dick Grayson Robin, and Supergirl. So, starting off with the Superman story, written by Greg Pak, art by Lee Weeks. We open up with a narration from Lara, Kal-El's mother, I'll say, and basically saying, like, your dad's a great man, your dad's a brave man, but, you know, he discovered the planet was dying and he kind of freaked out. He's a scientist, I'm a soldier, and that I'm going to give you my strength. And she's like cradling her son, and it's obvious this is the last day of Krypton, and she's basically given the whole thing of like saying, yeah, we're going to send you to Earth. We're going to hope that you're going to survive there. I mean, you'll survive. You're going to be like a god down there, but like, we hope that you're going to find someone who can care for you and love you the same way that we love you. And I have no reason to believe that's going to happen, but I'm hopeful for it. And she kisses him as she puts him in the rocket ship, and they send him off. And her narration continues onwards after that throughout the issue. But as we see Krypton explode and the ship land on Earth, it's now interspersed with Martha's narration, who's saying very similar things, saying like, oh, your dad's a good man, you know, John Kent, he's the best man I've ever known and whatnot. And as they're driving away from the crash site with little baby Clark, it's just like, who put a baby in a rocket? Is the Russians? Like, what's going on here? And she kisses his forehead, tastes salt, and realizes like, oh, someone else was crying over this baby. That's their tears I taste. And so she like takes hold of its little hand, and Clark grabs hold of her finger and then just snaps her fingertip, like breaks the bone. And she screams out. She's just like, ah, geez. And John like swerves the truck like, what happened? He's like, nothing, don't worry about it. It's all good. And she looks down at Clark and realizes like he's showing empathy despite the fact that he's clearly a newborn. And she's like, no, there's no way that you actually feel bad for doing that. That's so weird. So then John is just like, okay, when we get back, we'll call the sheriff. We'll see if like what we can do with the baby. And immediately Martha's like, no, we're not going to do any of that. Look, I know you're a good man. I get that you will walk like 20 miles to return change if you get too much, but like, we're keeping this baby. I don't care how many laws we break. And she's like, fine, all right, yeah, whatever. So, you know, he starts developing, he starts showing off super strength, heat vision, whatnot. And throughout the entire time, like, they were surprised, but they were never worried. They were never like taken aback and like told, you know, oh, don't do that, or make him feel ashamed of his powers. So then one day bullies are fighting him, and Martha just shoos him off with a broom. And Clark says like, oh, I didn't fight him because Dad said never to punch down. And she's like, yep, that's why I'm here. Gladly beat up a bunch of kids with a broom. And then, of course, the Kents die, and the narration over top is from Martha saying, like, one day we're not going to be there, and I hope that you don't just sit alone filled with, like, grief and anger or whatnot. I hope that you remember how loved you are, not just by myself, but whoever left you for us. And we then get the scene of Superman stopping the train for the kid who's, like, wearing his cape, and we see him come up to the kid, and the kid's like, hey, mister, what does the S stand for? And then we see Jimmy and Lois there with the cameras, and then Superman saying, it stands for Superman. So that's that. It's nice. It's a nice little one-shot. It gets your emotions flowing for his two mother characters. I'd say it's probably like a solid 7. And I will say, all these stories being shorter than normal, it's really going to have to do a lot to get higher than that. Like, to get into the 8-9 territory with a smaller page count, it's got to be something real special. Anyway, next up, Dick Grayson Robin. We have written by Kyle Higgins and art by Doug Mahnke. We're at Amusement Mile. Dick Grayson is with his parents, and they're just, you know, enjoying the day or whatnot. And Mom's just like, okay, all right, you hung out with us for like 4 hours. If you need to go meet up with your friends, we get it. And Dick's like, awesome, thanks, Mom and Dad. So he runs off to meet up with his friends. His dad stops him, though, and she's like, whoa, hey, your mom's birthday is tomorrow. Did you remember to get her a gift? And he's like, don't worry about it, Dad. And he's like, okay, what'd you get her? And he's like, don't worry about it. It's a surprise. So he runs off, and we see that the gift is a little bracelet with 2, like, robins on it, because that's his mother's favorite bird. And she's admiring it. She's like, oh, we really do have like a fantastic son. He's just the best, isn't he? And Dick is sitting outside of the trailer and is hearing him talk about him. And he's just like, yeah, pretty good. And then he overhears somebody shaking down Mr. Haley of the circus saying, pay up if you don't want no accidents to happen. And Haley's like, bro, we are a circus. We do not make a lot of money. There's nothing I can even give you, even if I wanted to. He's like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. So then that night, of course, the Flying Graysons stop flying and they fall down, and Dick leaves with the bracelet in his hand. He heads to the Wayne Care Center. Bruce Wayne steps in. He's just like, hey, do you remember me? He's like, yeah, you're at the circus. You're Bruce Wayne. What's up? And he's just like, I just want to know if there's anything I can do for you. And Dick's like, oh, there's only one thing I want. So we see 2 weeks have passed. Dick's jumping on rooftops and whatnot. He hasn't met Batman or anything, but he's hunting down known associates of Tony Zuko because the cops believe that Tony is behind it, but nobody can find him. So at this point, he goes in, he starts beating up some gangsters best he can, but he's like 12. So at that, he gets a gun pulled on him, and then that's when Batman swoops in, and Batman brings Dick to the cave, and he's like, look, Dick says, like, I know you were following me. I know you're looking for Zuko, but more importantly, like, you're keeping me safe as I'm doing this. And he's just like, yeah, all right, whatever. Anyway, and he shows him a map and says, here's all the locations of people who have worked with Zuko. We can go get them if you want, and he'll be able to bring down people like Falcone and Maroni and all that. However, I'm more worried about you. And he takes off his cowl, reveals himself to be Bruce Wayne, and Dick's like, oh, well, geez, that's okay, sure, whatever. So Bruce says, let me help you. Let me help you get what you need. And so we see the training montage of him becoming more, to start over, to change. And it's been 1 whole year now. Not yet. We see him drawing costumes, and nothing is striking his inspiration. He's just like, I don't know, these all seem stupid. I need something that's like me, And he looks over into a tree, and he sees a pair of robins, and he's like, and then Bruce points out, like, oh, in some cultures, the robin is a sign of rebirth. Maybe that's exactly what you need. So we see him in the robin costume, beating up Joker and Harley, and then we get it's been 1 year, and he's looking over his mother's bracelet. And he's talking to Alfred, and Alfred's like, what would you like to do? And Dick's like, I don't know. Like, Bruce goes out to his parents' grave, but that doesn't seem like me. That's not a thing that I feel is right. And so Alfred's like, okay, well, how about instead of mourning their death, you celebrate their life? Like, do something that is going to make you happy for them, Like, that you were around them at all. And he realizes, like, okay, yeah, I get it. And he goes out to Amusement Mile again. He hops onto a roller coaster, and we see him enjoying the day, thinking about his parents as 2 robins fly by. So that's nice. Honestly, I think it's a perfectly well-told story. Don't have any issues with that. I'd give that one a 7.5 as well. So last up, we got Supergirl, written by Tony Bedard, art by Paulo Siqueira. And we're on Krypton. We see that a bunch of young Kryptonian girls are left in the Scarlet Forest to prepare for their trials, and they come across a giant-ass bird dinosaur thing called a Fireclaw. And these 2 girls run up there just like, oh, well, I want proof that we got this close to a real Fireclaw. But then it noticed them, and it starts charging after them, and just like, oh, crap, we're going to die. And that's when Kara jumps in. She's got, like, some sort of mallet thing with electricity in it. She just whacks it over the head, and she's like, it's not going to do anything, but I had to do something. I saw these girls like sneaking away from the rest of the group, and I just had to follow them. Deep down, it's what I know I needed to do. So the Fireclaw is now trained on her. It's about to attack, and then a couple of robots come in, and they're just like, oh, they've truants detected, threat sedated. And they go to the 2 girls who left, and there's like 2-point deduction because you guys left the group. And Kara tries defending them, being like, no, they just got accidentally separated. And they point at Kara and be like, 4-point deduction. And he's like, wait, hold on, what? Why did I get more? And then we see her driving through the skies with her mom, and it turns out her mom explains the trials are the most important part of discovering who you are in Kryptonian culture. And the fact that they left from their assigned thing is why they got 2 points. But the fact that Kara tried to cover for them instead of letting them be their own people, that's what got them the extra like 4 points, you know? And Kara's like, that's stupid. I saved them. Doesn't that count for anything? And her mom basically explains like, look, every action has consequences, even good ones. And those are the sort of things that you need to learn to live with. Like, no good deed goes unpunished, you know? But I'm happy that you did it because you are upholding the honor of the House of L, and that's important. So we get the rundown of, you know, the House of L. Her father and uncle are both scientists. Her mother and aunt are both, like, police officers / soldiers. And as they discovered Krypton was going to get destroyed, Jor-El was like, yeah, no, I'm building a rocket ship, sending my son away. Meanwhile, Zor-El, her father, tried doing a bunch of different like genetic stuff, trying to essentially genetically modify Kara to be able to survive that stuff. We see he also built a bunch of other like monsters called world killers. And he's like, well, the monsters were a failure. I'm just going to jettison them away. Screw that. And also, none of my genetic stuff on my daughter actually did anything. I also tried making her like super enhanced armor, including an armor that was made out of like a Brainiac AI, but like, nope, no good. So the only thing I'm going to be able to do to save her is the same thing that my brother is doing, which is put her in a rocket ship and send her to Earth. That's all we can hope for. So he sedates her, he puts her there. Meanwhile, his wife comes in, discovers all the things he's doing, because he's in a secret lab. He's not making this stuff well known. And she ends up shooting him because, you know, he experimented on their daughter and like was going to just send her away without anything else. So, however, the rocket's already set. She leaves the planet. Something happens where she arrives much later. She's fully charged, and we see she comes out guns a-blazing. So then we say a few months have passed. She's starting to learn the way that the world works, and a North Korean satellite with 2 astronauts in it, something starts going wrong, and they call back down to Mission Command trying to like solve it, but they're about to burn up in entry. So Supergirl comes in, saves it. She x-rays the thing to see the 2 astronauts in. She heat visions off the part that they're in and then brings it back down to Earth. She follows the radio waves between the craft and the ground to figure out exactly where it needs to land, and she just sets it down in North Korea. And then she opens up the hatch to let the astronauts out, and she's like, don't worry, you're safe now. And then, of course, because it's North Korea, they just start opening fire on Supergirl. She heat visions the bullets away, and the Korean guy is like, you're trespassing, you westernist tool, this is an act of war. But she can't understand any of it because she didn't speak Korean, so she just flies off. And she's like, all right, well, like my mom said, no good deed goes unpunished, I guess. I just hope that my cousin doesn't find out. And Superman swoops in right then and is just like, you did what in North Korea? You got to think a little bit, Kara. You can't just swoop into North Korea. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Was I just supposed to let those astronauts die? And thankfully, Superman doesn't say maybe. But yeah, he's like, you just need to think. You need to understand the consequences. She's like, I'm learning as fast as I can, but you got to trust me to find my own way. So she flies off and leaves Superman behind saying like, yep, this world's weird, but I can deal with the consequences. That one, maybe it's just because we covered Supergirl's origins so in depth in her own book, but like, I don't know. It felt like there wasn't a lot to be told there, and they're just kind of throwing in some weird extra stuff. So I'm going to say that one's probably more like a 6.5 for me. It's not bad. It's just not comparatively to the other two that have like a real emotional punch, you know? So yeah, Secret Origins. We'll see what the next 3 is in the next issue. Batman Superman number 9, written by Greg Pak, art by Jay Lee. This is part 3 of the First Contact crossover, and again, just because I need to say it, part 4 somehow came out before part 3, so yeah, anyway, part 2 ended with Power Girl being attacked by a bunch of things, like guys in tubes with superpowers by the Kaizen of Gamora. Batman's there to help, and then Superman and Huntress are just chilling around because Superman has to have kryptonite on him because he might explode because of nanites in his body. Anyway, So we pick up a day ago where the Toy Master from like 2 arcs ago is doing some work. He gets a call from Superman and he's just like, whoa, hey, do you want me to make your action figure line? And he's like, no, I've looked at your factories. I've uploaded some specs to you. I need you to make it ASAP and send it over to like the east coast of Gamora. And you're going to have to make it like super fast and super secret. Got it? And Hero's like, can do. So we see what's going on now, and Superman is like doubled over in pain as some guards are checking his visas, basically. Of course, they don't have any. They see the kryptonite glowing around his neck. He's like, that's not okay. Give us that. And they're about to rip it off. And Hunter's like, that's a bad idea. Don't do that. So she starts kicking everybody. Meanwhile, one of the guards does get it off. And as soon as that happens, Superman just starts exploding with energy again. And the guards are still just like, freeze, you're under arrest. And everyone's like, yeah, that's not going to work, bro. So Huntress starts pulling them away from like the explosions. She tosses the kryptonite necklace back over to Clark, but then he falls down into a fissure in the ground and Huntress dives in afterwards. So over with Power Girl, she starts getting attacked by a bunch of superpowered test tube guys. And immediately as they start using like heat vision on her, Batman's like, hey, Power Girl, get out of here. We don't know whether or not your powers are up to snuff after the nanites have left, so just let me handle this. And she's like, what? You're a dude in a bat suit. What are you talking about? They're super powered. I can do this. And she's just like, nah, screw that. I'm taking control of this situation. You got to get out of here. And she basically says like, that's part of the reason. She knows it's only part of the reason. The other part is like a portal to her world is going to open up. And I don't trust her to not do something brash. And all of a sudden he starts getting the memories of Superman from Earth 2 back during the first arc that they completely forgot about. And just like, yeah, that's right. There was the other Superman and he was insanely powerful, but he was also like a lot more arrogant. And there's like, if that's something she picked up, I can't allow her anywhere near that portal. So we see Huntress down, meeting up with Clark. He's like freaking out. He's maniacally laughing at one point, which I don't get. But regardless, she passes back over the kryptonite necklace and says like, hey, you got to put this on. You're not in control. And as Superman's like eyes are leaking energy, he's like, nah, I'm fine. I'm all good. All of a sudden there's a cave in. And we see it looks like Huntress gets trapped under some rocks, but Superman ends up holding it up at the last second. He's like, are you okay? And as he's forced to concentrate on this, he's just like, right, okay, yeah, sorry, I need to take care of this. So there's two things here that I want to say, though, is that one, Huntress recounts a story from her Superman on her Earth, where apparently after some like hard-fought battle or something, Superman went around to everybody and individually like talked to them. But apparently he modulated his voice to a frequency that calm down each of the people as he talked to them. So he was genuinely making people calmer, like just by talking. And then our Superman, as he's taking the kryptonite necklace, says, oh yes, I know I have to put it on. It's something I have to do, but like she has no idea what it feels like to have all this power and have to give it up. And he puts on the necklace and Hunter's like, yeah, whatever. There's like 7 billion people who don't have powers. Get over yourself. So Superman says like, yeah, you sound like your dad. And she's like, da. You haven't met my dad. That guy over there, Batman, that's not my dad. My dad's dead, in an alternate universe. And then Superman's like, but wait, I did meet your dad. I'm getting the memories of it. I remember that dad. And he starts remembering all the first arc stuff. He's just like, oh yeah, no, we were there and we fought with them, but now they're dead. Did we fail? We could have saved them. And Hunter's like, what are you talking about? It's not your fault. And he's just like, no, you don't understand. I'm Superman. I can literally do anything. So if anything bad happens, it is kind of my fault. So back with Power Girl, she's still getting involved in the fight despite the fact that Batman doesn't want her to the point where she's literally lifting Batman up out of the fight and like throwing him aside or like using his body to bash other people. And just like, all right, yeah, I'm pretty sure that even your Superman is not this dickish. So at that point, she's about to fly towards like the energy source where the portal is going to spawn up. But Kaizen jumps in and says, activate. So the energy just blasts them away. There's holes ripped open in the mountain where they're at. And Superman and Huntress see this, and they're just like, all right, I'm willing to bet that's where Batman and Power Girl are. Let's go ahead and take care of that. But at that moment, Toy Master's thing comes in. He's like, hey, Superman, I made it. It's on a rush. Here you go. And he drops off a box and flies away. He's too weak to open up the straps on it with the kryptonite around him. So Huntress, like, snaps the cables, and she's like, all right, what the heck is this? And he's just like, I had an idea as to how we could deal with these nanites. And it's Toy Master's narration here describes how he had a theme park that was going to allow people to like zoom around in actual asteroid belts and like blow them up. So he just repurposed one of those, and it's thick enough lining that it should stop all communication with the nanites. So it's a suit. He puts it on, and we see that Superman is literally inside of a mech suit. So he busts in to the fight with Power Girl and whatnot, and he immediately goes to the portal, and he's like, that looks like a problem. I'm going to smash it. Batman's like, no, hold on, don't smash it. We don't know what kind of energy it would cause if you destroy it. We just have to close it. That's the main thing here. And Superman's like, all right, sure. So he gets near the portal, and he tells the suit to expand to fill the hole. And Toy Master is still apparently in his ear at this point. He's just like, I never really intended it to do that. And he's like, well, we're going to try. So he tries to make it expand to fill the hole. It doesn't work, but the energy blast from the portal that hits Superman ends up destroying the nanites in his body. So now he's back to full power, and everything else is good to go. So they look over at the portal again, and Batman and Superman are like, hey, we've been there before, haven't we? And Superman's like, yeah. Why did we only just now remember it, though? That's weird. And they say, like, hey, you got to get away from the portal, Huntress and Power Girl. But at that point, they are looking through the portal, and they see it's there. It's their world on the other side. But it's significantly more destroyed. So, yeah. Q Part 4, which already happened in World's Finest number 21. So, again, it's not a bad part. It's fine. It's just such an editorial mistake, the fact that this was delayed and they didn't delay Part 4, you know? Like, I get that, like, there's a timing thing to it. I'm sure they couldn't delay it for whatever reason, but, like, it's just not a good read because of that. I know what happens now. In terms of the story objectively on its own, it's fine. I do think Jay Lee sometimes gets a little bit too, I don't want to say artsy-fartsy, but that's kind of the only term coming to mind. He has a very free-flowing art structure, and it makes it sometimes a little hard to figure out what in the hell is going on. So, overall, I just had some problems with this issue. I think some of them justifiable, some of them subjective, but regardless, I'm just going to give this one like a 5.5. It's a lot going into it, and I understand that, but the event as a whole was kind of not worth it to begin with, so check out Part 4 for that. Catwoman number 30, written by Ann Nocenti, art by Patrick Olliffe. So, I don't even know like how to begin with this, because nothing makes sense anymore. So Gothtopia happened. And in Gothtopia, Catwoman said, screw being Catwoman, it's brought me nothing but pain. And then you think that would just get undone because Gothtopia was over. But no, this issue opens up with her burning her Catwoman suit, saying like, I never want to be Catwoman again. It sucks. It's awful. And we see her burning her stuff in like a homeless alley. And as she leaves, a guy's like, hey, how much do you cost per hour? And she's like, I'm not a hooker. Get lost. And then he just leaves. So then she goes to the gym because she's like, well, if I'm not going to be Catwoman, I need to get my cardio in. So she starts hitting the punching bag. Coach comes up and just like, yo, ease up. Go do some on the speed bag. And she's like, all right. And then she just immediately punches the speed bag off of the like chain it's on. To which the person who catches it is Trip Winter, who is her guy who got her jobs for a while. And he basically says like, oh, did you lose something? And then he disappears. We just go to a different scene. So now she's at the animal shelter, and she's looking at a bunch of cats, and she's like, I'll take them all. So she brings home all of the cats, which I'm just going to say I don't think is allowed, but regardless, she looks around her apartment because now she is in a penthouse, which I don't even remember happening either, and she's like, oh man, I stole this penthouse, and I stole all the stuff in it. Is that any way for an ex-thief to live? I don't think so. I'm going to give back everything I ever stole. And so she dumps out her purse, but then inside she finds a little invitation in the form of a puzzle box, which you'd think maybe solving the puzzle box would be a whole thing on its own, but she's like, oh, you just got to press this button here. And she does, and it just opens up. And inside is a bag full of teeth and a USB drive. And she's like, that's weird. Anyway, I need to go get to work. So in Gothtopia, she was a suicide hotline person because that made sense in Gothtopia where like suicides were just a huge thing that happened. Turns out that was real, and she kept that job. Like that wasn't a Gothtopia thing. That's just her job. So she's on the line, she gets a call, and someone says like, oh, I betrayed my best friend and I hate myself. I don't know what to do. And Catwoman's like, well, I'll be your friend and it's okay. I like it. You're a good person deep down, I'm sure. And so she's like, okay, will you stay and talk with me? And the person on the line's like, yeah, okay, I guess I'll stay. And then everyone in the office is high-fiving, hearing that. Because I guess she's on speakerphone. And then the woman on the voice says, yeah, I'll stay dead. And then a bang goes off. And everyone just stops high-fiving. Catwoman runs off. Sorry, Selina, because she's not Catwoman. And turns out she recognized the voice was that of Gwen, her fence. And she's like, what? So she busts into Gwen's house, and we see there's like 14 gunshot holes, like bullet holes in the wall behind Gwen. And she's like, I'm sorry, Selina, please forgive me. I betrayed you. So she hugs her, and then they talk, and Selina's like, oh, I had no idea all that stuff was going on in the Penguin. Like, he tortured you for info or whatnot? It's whatever. And she's like, oh, I couldn't face you. I'm so sorry. And then that's done. And then Gwen says, hey, what's that flash drive? Let's go plug that in and see what it is. So they plug it in, and like they say that it's encrypted as well, and it takes them one panel to crack it. So then a video file starts up, and it's this woman. She's like, hey, I'm the best thief that ever lived. And Catwoman says, screw you, man. I'm the best thief that ever lived. I guess kind of forgetting the fact that she just quit being Catwoman like 30 seconds ago. And she's like, my name's Roulette. I'm starting a like race of thieves to prove who is the greatest thief in the world. So if you want to do this for money, there's a cash prize. It's like billions of dollars. If you do it for more altruistic reasons, you should have received a bag of teeth. Those all came from children that I have taken hostage. So you can also do it to save the kids. Regardless, show up. And so Gwen's like, oh, I'm going to scan these teeth to see if I can match them up with any kids that like have dental records. And Selina's like, maybe I should do this because it'll keep Gwen from being suicidal. And Gwen goes to the closet and pulls out a Catwoman costume and says, here you go. I get just saying I have this. I saved this one. So now she's able to be Catwoman again. She goes to a children's hospital to get some dental records. The kid from issue like 12 that was kidnapped by the Joker in Death of the Family shows up. And she's just like, hey, Catwoman, you're back. And he's missing a tooth. And he's just like, whoa, hold on. What happened to your tooth? And it's like, oh, this nice lady came and took my tooth. And so they realize that none of these kids were actually taken hostage. They just took the teeth. But it might also be hostage kids that are just not these kids. So she says, I got to show up anyway. So she goes over to Alice Tesla's workshop and just gets some more tech. She gets a charm bracelet that the charms explode. And then she's got a tripwire that she can extend from a dress and no one will be able to see it at night. And then Alice Tesla says, hey, can I keep these teeth? Yeah. So anyway, she goes to the location she's supposed to at Gotham Beach. She sees a bunch of other people around. Golden Glider's obviously there. And we find out that the guy that she's with is Mirror Master very quickly. Catwoman starts setting up like tripwires and stuff just in case they need them. She recognizes that two of the people who leave the party very quickly are undercover detectives. It's Alvarez and Keyes. And they're just like, okay, there's not just Gotham people here. Mirror Master and Golden Glider are here. So we need to call up Interpol or like the FBI or whatever. This is bigger than just Gotham. So then she goes through the party. She discovers, what's his name? Jolt, I believe. I don't know. The dude who got electric powers like 10 issues ago. He showed back up and he's like, oh, hey, Catwoman, check this out. I now have extra electric powers. And he zaps her champagne to the point where it boils. And she's just like, hey, man, that's cool and all, but you got to learn how to control your powers like that. So Roulette shows up and says, hey, Catwoman, you made it. Trip Winters works for me. So just letting you know, that's how you got the invite. Anyone, everybody, meet our benefactor. And she brings out a billionaire who's like chained up saying like, and I swear to God, he has like flames for hair, but they never bring attention to it. So I don't know if he actually does or not, because they just keep saying he's a normal billionaire. Anyway, turns out they kidnapped his kid, and if, you know, his kid is to be safely returned, then he has to pony up $1 billion or whatever. So that's the way that they're doing the cash prize. And he starts pleading with everybody saying like, please, my son is innocent. She's like, shut up. All right, everybody. The 3 Ds of crime are dexterity, deception, and disguise. So prove your dexterity. And oh yeah, I missed this point before. Gwen makes the point of like a bunch of crimes that have been committed, and she says like, oh yeah, a whole thing of Bitcoin was stolen, to which Catwoman says, that's completely worthless. And I'm like, damn, Catwoman, topical. So she lets out this giant robot dog thing that immediately attacks Joel and just like kills him, I guess. It's honestly hard to tell. And then the dog just disappears and all the thieves start fighting with each other. Mirror Master immediately pulls out his mirror gun, just like, all right, I'm just going to send you all to the mirror world. And she starts shooting like mirrors everywhere. Another thief shows up named Swindle, and Catwoman trips her into one of Mirror Master's mirrors. So at that point, like, everyone's just going into the mirrors. It's like impossible. Like nobody else. Catwoman is able to stay out a little bit longer because she's using the mirrors to her advantage to like dodge punches and such. But eventually Golden Glider gets her all wrapped up in her, I don't know, straps, whatever you want to call it, and throws Catwoman into Mirror World. And Catwoman literally just says, Mirror World, I'm falling through Mirror Master's infinity of reflections, but which ones are real? No, I can't stand it. That's the issue. I felt like I had like a seizure halfway through this book. Like, I swear to God, the fact they opened it with Catwoman no more, and then like 6 pages later, she's like, guess I'm Catwoman again. You could do a whole arc off that, you know? You don't have to just like throw it away immediately. God. That's the part I hate most about Nocenti's writing, is the fact that nothing feels like it matters. Like, everything just pops up and is immediately like, well, that was weird, moving on. So, yeah, no, this is, like, actually bad. I'm going to give this one a 2.5. I did not like it, if that's not clear. And what's worse is, this is just the first issue of the whole arc. I don't think this is going to end anytime soon. I'm so unhappy. Superman number 30, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Ed Benes. I'm still not sure on that one. This is a prelude to Superman Doomed. So we open up in the Bahamas, following Jane Thrumble and Alstar Khan. Who are these people? We get their entire life story, and I'm not going to bore you with it. Safe to say is that they got married, and now they're enjoying their honeymoon in the Bahamas, but like they also kind of hated each other for like, we get their whole backstory. And as they are enjoying out in the ocean, saying like, oh, hold me forever, Alistar, all of a sudden Jane feels something like sting her ankle. She pulls it up. It looks like a bone of some sort. She thinks it's like a shark's tooth or something. And Alistair's like, you know how you didn't want me to buy you a wedding ring? I'm going to take that and put it into a ring. And she's like, it's kind of way too big for a ring. And then all of a sudden, the water beneath them starts boiling and they die. The end. That's their story. God, I hated these 4 pages. So then we got to Smallville, and we see a bunch of soldiers are making their way through the town, and they keep on finding, like, people and saying, oh, it's the same as all the others. So we go to Sam Lane, who at this point is a senator, no longer a colonel, and the current colonel's talking to him, being like, okay, Sam Lane, you have some history with Smallville. You want to tell me why every single person in Smallville all of a sudden dropped into a coma? And he's like, I don't have the foggiest idea. And call me senator. And they say, some soldiers come up and say, hey, General Lane. He's like, a senator. He's like, whatever. Something's flying in fast. And of course, it's Superman. And Superman lands, and he's just like, all right. Any attack on Smallville is an attack on me. Probably vice versa as well. So someone explain to me what in the hell's going on here. And the colonel goes off, like, not Sam Lane. The current colonel is just like, screw this, I don't have time for this. And then Lane's like, look, Superman, I know you care about this town for whatever reason. I probably should look into that more. But regardless, why don't you x-ray vision these people? Because you're going to find out what's wrong with them a hell of a lot faster than some nerdy scientists. And Superman does, and does not see anything. And he's just like, nothing. They're in a coma, but other than that, there's nothing like in their bodies. And he's just like, all right, well, what about the crop circles? And Superman's like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'll check it out. So he flies up. Turns out the crop circles are Kryptonian, and they are written over and over saying the same word, doom. And so immediately he's just like, doomsday, right, got it, doomsday. So got to check that out. So he scans around Smallville. He eventually sees the grain silo where he's like, wait a minute, something's in there. A body of some sort. Let's go. And he punches in through it. And then immediately, powers disappear. Kryptonite. He's gone into a kryptonite area. And turns out, inside of this silo is the Eradicator of Krypton, who last showed up in not Hell on Earth, but the other Hell storyline. Return of Krypton? Something like that. Regardless, he's here and he's like, hey, Kal-El, let me explain what an Eradicator is. Whenever a planet naturally dies, an Eradicator shows up, and it just kind of helps the planet to its natural end. That's what I was for Krypton. However, I wasn't there to be destroyed at the end of it because Return to Krypton, like that storyline, put me here on Earth. So I've just been kind of dicking around for a while. However, your planet does not have an Eradicator because it's going to die suddenly and violently, and it's all going to be your fault. And Superman's like, you mean Doomsday's fault? And he's like, no. And then he takes Superman and throws him up into the air, like into space. And as Superman gets far enough away where his powers come back, he looks down, he's like, all right, Eradicator's gone. I don't know what that was about. Hey, Justice League uplink, I need everybody to focus in because something crazy's going on. So we go over to the Daily Planet, and Lois is walking around. Someone's talking to her about what's going on in Smallville. I don't recognize the guy, but she's just not responding. She's totally ignoring him. And we see as she makes her way to Perry White's office, she still doesn't say anything. White's calling her out hey, Lois, why aren't you on a plane to Smallville? Come on, get her going with it. She just says stop, and it's in the Brainiac font. And so Perry White just head down on his desk. Lois walks over to the window and says, oh, they're ready, my lord. It won't be long now. And we see way, way out in space is, I guess, a ship. It looks like a mix between a Cobra and a baked bean. And it's saying, oh, you've done well, my bride, as Lois has become a 12th level intellect. So then we go to the Fortress of Solitude. Clark's on a FaceTime call with Cat Grant, just saying hey, yeah, I'm totally got a story for the website. Don't worry about it. I'll be back soon. And we see him looking over all the stuff that he has, trying to find Doomsday anywhere on Earth. Meanwhile, though, the bottled city of Kandor, which he has had pretty much the entire time he's been Superman, all the Kandorians inside have been totally still. They haven't moved ever until now, as we see the Kandorians all get up and start zombie walking their way over to the edge of the glass and then just start pounding on it. But Superman's not paying any attention. And we see Cyborg pop up on the screen, and he's like, hey, you told me to keep an eye out for Doomsday. And I don't know for certain that this is Doomsday, but there's an island in the Bahamas that has been just killed. It's just dead. It's an island, and it's dead. So, yeah, that's probably Doomsday. And that's the issue. Here's the thing. The issue itself, fine, whatever. It's all just set up for Superman Doomed. I'm fine with that. Like, sure, you got a bunch of moving pieces. We got the Brainiac thing going on. We got the Eradicator doing some, like, prophecy stuff going on. And, of course, Doomsday is involved. I'm fine with all that. But the 4 full pages that describe to me the life and times of a married couple and, like, how they didn't like each other, and then they stumbled across each other one day as they were, like, going on a train together, and then they fell back in love, and it's like, why? Why are we... I'd care more if they were going to show back up at any point, but you just gave me 4 full pages for, like, the most shallow, empty characters that were immediately then killed off. Was it to make me care about them before they died? Because if so, you shouldn't have had made them look like the most yuppie, awful people. It's like a Kim Kardashian style thing going on here, where they've got their own private Bahama Island. Like, good. I'm glad it was destroyed. I don't know. The issue itself was not horrible. It wasn't great, but I'm willing to accept that you just have to do a bunch for Prelude stuff. And those 4 pages were just a bad setup for that. Yeah, I'm going to say this is I was about to say 6, but nah. I'm still going to give it above average, but only to like a 5.5. Not good. Not good by any means. But at least it's setting up whatever the hell's going to be going on with the Doomed storyline. Red Lanterns number 30, written by Charles Soule, art by Alessandro Vitti and Jim Calafiore. So, last issue we had Bleeze come back and say, Atrocitus, he's coming, he's here, whatever, you know, the Thanos thing. This issue we pick up with the planet Primine, a random planet in the middle of nowhere, and we get introduced to a woman named Shaco, who is a judge. And Shaco is just being brought into judgehood. We see her first days there, and she describes the legal process on her planet, which is basically the same as the legal process in the, like, world. And she's like, yep, nope, we make sure that everything is done pure, and it's no, like, corruption or anything like that at all. And she's proud of her job, and she's like, yep, this is not supposed to be an easy job, but I do it with my finest ability. And then decades pass, and we see her significantly older, and her bailiff that she had on day 1 is still there being her bailiff now. And she describes how over the decades, it's just been corrupted to hell. Like, everything is about your power and status in the world, and there's no such thing as just being true justice anymore. And now, finally, the king, his son, the crown prince, has committed horrible atrocities that cannot be ignored, and he's forced to take trial. Normally, they just sweep it under the rug. He's forced to take trial, otherwise there'd be an uprising, and the judge is supposed to let him go, let him off easy. And he's just like, she's just up there saying, like, you know what? We find you guilty of all the crimes, and we sentence you to the greatest execution, like immediate execution for all the victims and their families, as our culture determines. Let this show that justice is not dead. And the king is just like, Shaco, you shouldn't have done that. And he commands the bailiff, all right, wipe that off the record and kill her instead. And so the bailiff turns around and aims the gun at Shaco, and Shaco's like, oh, they bought you too, huh? I thought I could trust you, man. All right, whatever. Shoot me in front of all these people and all these cameras and show that justice truly is dead. And so the judge gets shot and Shaco dies. We'll get back to that. So over on the Red Lantern planet, guy's talking to Bleeze, and Bleeze is just like, look, I'm healing up. I'm not doing great, but like, yeah, no, it's Atrocitus here is what's going on. He's just like, no, he's not here yet, but we need all the info you got. And it's like, all right. I was on the planet. Atrocitus, he had like this mindless beast. It was a Red Lantern, so he probably got like Ratchet's ring or one of the other rings as well, because he also had his Red Lantern abilities. Also, Dexstar is able to make constructs, and you just know that Atrocitus probably took Dexstar's blood in order to make constructs himself. So now we've got an Atrocitus that can make constructs, and he's got like other Red Lanterns under his thrall now. also Rancor stayed behind to make sure I could live. And we got to go find him. It's important to find him. And she's like genuinely upset over Rancor dying. And Zilius Ox is there just being like, hey, man, it's cool. Rancor was like able to fight all of us to a standstill. And it's like, yeah, when he was the only one who could make constructs, he had a good upper hand. Now he doesn't anymore. We need to go help him. And guys, like, I get it. I totally understand. But, like, we need to do something else first. Because if Atrocitus is going out and trying to collect all the rings that he sent out before I joined the Red Lantern Corps, then he's going to have us outnumbered like 2-1 because there's still 7 more that are unaccounted for. So we need to deal with that first. He tells Zox to have the ship turned into like a long-range scanner, which is something that Atrocitus won't have. He'll have to be, in closer proximity, whereas they can search anywhere in the galaxy, basically. And Zox goes off to do that, but Bleeze calls him out being like, no, Rancor might still be alive, but it's not going to be for long. We need to go deal with that. And Guy's like, look, I get what you're saying, but like, no, he will come here and he will destroy us. And that means Sector 2814 is under attack, which means my home planet is. I can't let that happen. And she's like, all right, well, then I'm just going to go out on my own because you can't control me. Screw you. So she gets up. She's about to leave. Guy calls in Kara. And is like, hey, Kara, I need you to make sure Bleeze doesn't leave. And Bleeze is like, oh, you think a new recruit's going to be able to stop me? And she tries pushing past Kara, like over and over. And Kara just totally rock solid. And she's like, yeah, she's Kryptonian. You keep her in this room. Don't let her leave. Bye. So Kara's just like, hey, I'm not your enemy here. We're all part of the same group. How about you get back in bed? You're hurting. She's like, I don't want to. Screw you, man. And she's like, look, I got some questions I want to ask you. And she's like, oh, Rancor used to ask me questions. All right, go ahead, kid. I like you now. So we cut back to Shaco on the planet, and she is bleeding out in like this pool behind the court. And she's super upset that, her king turned on her. Her bailiff turned on her. That justice itself has been done such a mistrial here. And she's angry, so of course, Shaco of Pramine, you have great rage in your heart. And as the prince is getting unhandcuffed, the prince is like, hey, bailiff, how does it feel to have killed someone that you worked with all your life? I've killed plenty of people. I mean, not that it matters anymore. And then coming out of the water in like judge robes and like a hood and all that is Shaco being like, yeah, bailiff, why don't you tell him how you feel killing me? So they start shooting at Shaco, but she's just so 100% pissed off. She's able to read the like thoughts and secrets of these people, and she judges them both as guilty and uses her Red Lantern powers to just destroy them. And as she looks out over the crowd, she's just like, you know what? All of you. You've all let the system get corrupted to this point, therefore you're all guilty. And she just starts unloading on all of them. She is judging them all as guilty. So we cut back up onto the ship where Zox is making some adjustments, and Scalix is just like, hey man, why don't we pull a double cross and just go to Atrocitus, because we all know how this is going to end. Like, why not be on Atrocitus' side? And Zox is like, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that because, like, dude, just pick a side, man. You keep on doing this double cross thing, and it's just pathetic, man. Like, Ratchet died for the cause. Guy Gardner could go back to the Green Lanterns whenever he wants. Maybe not like as a Green Lantern, but he doesn't have to stick around with us. Just pick a side, man. I'm done with this. So he activates the ship, the scanner's going, and they start looking for other Red Lanterns. So Kara's talking to Bleeze, and it's a very in-depth conversation, but the long and short of it is, Kara's trying to figure out what her purpose as a Red Lantern is, and Bleeze is like, I've wrestled with that a long time, and here's what I've come to. The purpose of Red Lanterns is to make sure that no more Red Lanterns are ever made. Like, we are here to make it so that nobody feels the rage that we have felt. That's what we should be aiming for. And Kara's like, I like that. Would you like to be my friend? And Bleeze is like, I would love that. So the ship gets a hit. It's a massive energy signal. And Guy's like, wow, that big of a signal. It must be like all 7 of them in one place, right? And Scalix is like, no, that's one of them. That's just one ring. We got to go. So they pull Bleeze out of the hospital bed because it's like, I need Kara, and I don't trust you not to run. So Kara's going to be running double duty of making sure you don't leave and also helping me down on this planet. And Kara's like, cool, I'm going to go knock some heads. And she's like, nah, just let me talk to them first. So They go down to the planet. Immediately, they're fired upon. Kara's about ready to knock some heads again. And Blaze is like, hold on. Let Guy do his talking thing. And Guy's like, look, you just shot us with everything you got, and we're still just standing here. Mind telling us what's going on? And they're like, yeah, we could talk. Something that wears your insignia showed up in our courtroom and then just started killing everybody. And like massive swaths of the planet are now damaged. And it's like, okay, well, we can go down and handle that. And it's like, yeah, no, please slow them down. It's like, what do you mean them? And it's like, oh yeah, it's the one that showed up, and also there's a big red one and there's a cat. And it's like, shit. Atrocitus is here, and we cut over to Atrocitus, just like, wow, that judge thing is killing everybody. That's going to be a great addition to my Red Lantern Corps. So yeah, that's where we leave off. I like it. I like the idea of like, because I can see where this goes, you know? I can't say for certain if it's going to go there, but I like the idea that like the Red Lanterns they've always been just kind of a rage-filled group of just like vigilantes essentially, but I like this idea that they might set up more of what the Green Lanterns have, of like they have a court, they have a judgment system, they actually have this idea of deciding what is okay and what is not. And I don't know. I think that's a good direction to take this idea, and of the Red Lanterns can be more than just show up, blast some people, and say, now don't do it again. So, yeah, no, this is a solid issue for me. I especially like Shaco's story. It's never not going to be relevant. So I'm going to give this one a solid 8. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing how the rest of the arc is going to shake out from there. Larfleeze number 10, written by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis, art by, I believe, Scott Kolins. I'm not entirely, Scott Kolins. So last issue, I mean, a lot happened, but the big reveal was Nort, the Green Lantern, showed up to help save the day, I guess. We pick up in this issue with Larfleeze flying back to the House of Tuathan because he realized he forgot Stargrave. And he's like, hey, everybody, I'm back from my butler. And as he gets there, nobody's there. And he's like, oh, where is everybody? They must have run back to their home dimension. And then as he calls out some more, his ring finally enters, being like, dude, no one's here. They left. And he's like, I thought I told you not to talk to me. He's like, I know, but like you keep shouting and I'm the only one here. So the ring says, look, I can track him. He's somewhere else. I'll go and tell you where he is. Just please, for the love of God, stop yelling. And he's like, oh yeah, but first I need to get all the shiny stuff here. So he teleports all the shiny stuff away, blows up the rest of the House of Tuathan, and follows the ring to wherever Stargrave is. We see that Stargrave and the Wanderer have crashed down on this random alien planet. Stargrave's like, what the hell was that? She explains, my brother, Zum of all things, died, and I could feel it. And it was so, oh my God, I can't even describe it. And as she is saying, I can't believe that Larfleeze, my betrothed, because that was the whole thing last issue, murdered him. And that's when Zum shows up in a tree and being like, nah, man, I'm cool. I spread my life amongst a bunch of other things. So yeah, I'm still here. And as he's talking through his tree, a bunch of natives from this planet show up, say, talking demon tree, and then just start hacking at it with axes. And Wanderer's like, are you good? And he's like, yeah, it doesn't hurt, but like I'm probably gonna have to leave this for him, so I'll check you later. So at that point, Dirge shows up and tries stealing Stargrave, and Wanderer's like, what are you doing kidnapping my butler? She's like, we got a plan to attack and kill Larfleeze. We need the butler as bait. And Wanderer's like, you can't do that. I'm going to use him as my dowry for my husband once the betrothed thing happens. Dirge is like, oh, Jesus Christ, are you actually still going through with that? And she's like, yes, of course I am. So because Zum is not around anymore, that somehow means that Wanderer is now susceptible to Dirge's sorrow powers. So she's knocked out into a trance of depression while Dirge takes Stargrave to wherever and literally just teleports off planet. So as they're about to approach the planet, Larfleeze's ring says like, whoa, hey, he was on that planet, but now he's not anymore. I don't know where he went. And then Wanderer just zooms past off planet, just straight past Larfleeze, not even noticing him. And the ring is like, that was the lady that had him though, so maybe we should follow her. So he gives chase. Back on the planet, we see the House of Tuathan have set up this massive trap gate thing and just puts Stargrave hanging by a rope in the middle of it. And they say, yeah, so Larfleeze will show up and he'll go through the trap and then we'll do that. And we see that the Lord of the Hunt is the one who made the trap because Nort shows up. And Nort's like, hey, that's a pretty mighty fine trap you got there. Oh, I haven't seen one of them traps before. And the Lord's like, yes, I know. My father showed me how to make it when he took me out on my first hunt. And Nort's just like making conversations, like, yeah, please tell me more. And the Hunt eventually just like stops and he's like, I'm sorry, do I know you? And he's like, nope, I'm Nort of the Green Lantern Corps, and I'm sorry to say that your transdimensional portal trap there is against Green Lantern law. And so then Lord of the Hunt just swats him away and just be like, all right, can someone help me kill this gnat? And he's like, it's not gnat, it's Nort. So Nort gets up and he's just like, yep, well, you're not going to catch me with my guard down twice. No sirree, Bob. So it took me 17 years to get through my training. So he managed to actually put handcuffs on the Lord of the Hunt. And that's where the other one, the one with the storm or whatever, she comes in and she starts swatting him down. And they're like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. He's got a ring. He's got an energy ring like Larfleeze, everybody, but this one's green. And that's when the one who's all pretty or whatever, she chimes in and she's like, whoa, hold on. Green ones are a problem, guys. Green ones, there are like thousands of them, and we don't want to mess with that. So, yeah, we can't allow this one to alert any of the others. So we see that as the Wanderer is about to approach the planet, Larfleeze throws up a gate and it's just like, hey, what'd you do with my butler? And she's like, you don't understand. Your thing was taken, but like look, I made this oath that I would marry whoever is the first person to feed me. And Larfleeze is like, I don't care, give me my butler, and starts beating the crap out of her. Meanwhile, down on the planet, Nort's actually holding his own pretty well against several of the House of Tuathan people. And Stargrave just kind of recaps the fact of like, oh yeah, no, all this stuff is going on. And then he looks over and sees that Larfleeze is crashing down to Earth. And it's just like, all right, well, I guess we didn't need to entice him that much. He just came down on his own right. So as Larfleeze is still battling with Wanderer, she keeps trying to explain. And then she finally is like, she's being like lifted up over Larfleeze's head. He's about to like destroy her. And she's like, oh, you don't understand. I'm your love. And she's like, what? Huh? You're mine? And she's like, yeah, you know, I'm you could be my husband. I want that. And so Larfleeze has a flashback to his mom basically saying like, no girl is good enough. Only your mother is clean. Everyone else will give you cooties. And Larfleeze is like, you want to give me cooties? She's like, what? Larfleeze doesn't want cooties. And then he blasts her again anyway. So as she lands on top of Nort, disrupting his concentration, letting the other lords free. And she's like, hey, you have a ring too. And he's like, yes, I do. And he's like, and you kind of look like a dog. And he's like, I've been told that before. And she's like, oh, wow, you remind me of someone. He's like, oh, someone nice? And she's like, no, I hate him. So she starts attacking Nort because she's been rejected by Larfleeze. And as she's saying all this, she's like, oh, stupid rings of green, orange, whatever color. And Nort's like, I'm sorry, did you say orange? Like, I'm dropping the act for a minute here. Did you say orange? And that's when Larfleeze rushes in and starts attacking Wanderer some more. And Nort looks over at like all the robots from the planet and just like, hey guys, when you brought me in, you didn't say anything about Larfleeze being here. That's like way outside my pay grade. And they're like, oh, well, would you have showed up if we said it? And so it's like, no, not at all. Clearly not. So finally, we reach the final like page here, and the robots point out that the butler is in the ring, and then the Lords of the Hunt point out that the butler is still the key to defeating Larfleeze, and the Wanderer points out to Larfleeze that the butler's inside the trap, and then it just goes to Stargrave saying like, man, I wish I was more popular in high school. I actually got a few laughs out of this issue. I think Nort's pretty fun. I actually have a few of the pre-Emerald Twilight series that has Nort in there for a little bit, so I might actually go back and crack those open because I'm a little bit interested in seeing more about his character. Beyond that, this is a solid issue. Writing's fine. I mean, if you like Larfleeze, you're going to like this issue. If you hate what's going on, this isn't going to change you at all. I know that J.M. DeMatteis and Keith Giffen's writing style is very much a love it or hate it sort of thing, but I'm actually okay with it right now. So I'm going to give this one a solid 7. I'm not going to pretend it's anything higher than that, but it is at least keeping up the entertainment factor. Aquaman number 30, written by Jeff Parker, art by Paul Pelletier and Álvaro Martínez. So last issue, Dr. Evans, some random dude, took Aquaman's trident to open up a portal that it turned out was like kinda hell, and then as demons were escaping, turns out Hercules was also in there, and he was super pissed off because the Atlanteans are the ones that sealed him in there. So we pick up at Triton base, where maybe like 2 issues ago, last issue, somewhere in there, a dude just got like messed up, and he's in the surgical bay trying to have his life saved, and we see that the Dr. Orson down there is using some questionable techniques where he's using like parts of a kraken's brain in order to bring this guy back, and he's just like, screw the will of God, I'm going to do my own thing. Meanwhile, over in the Azores, which is where this portal opened up, Hercules is just bashing the ever-loving hell out of Aquaman, and he's about to throw him down into the portal of hell. And as he does so, the portal closes up. It seals before Aquaman can go through. And the other, what are they called? The Giant-born, like the queen of them, looks and just be like, all right, well, that's inconvenient. And Aquaman looks up and sees that Dr. Evans has removed the trident from the key hole, I guess, and it has caused the portal to close. So at that point, the Giant-born queen is just like, look, I've spent literal millennia whispering madness into Hercules' ears. He's totally crazy now. I'm just going to let him do the thing against Aquaman. Meanwhile, me and the other Giant-born are going to take off, and we're just going to go mess with the world. Bye. So they all leave. Hercules goes after Dr. Evans because he's holding the trident, so he thinks he's an Atlantean. Aquaman jumps in, throws a punch, being like, yo, I need you to open up another doorway, this time to like anywhere else. And Dr. Evans points out there's a plate on the wall that if he changes something about it, it could send him elsewhere. But he's like, look, it currently is set to like, hell, pretty much. We could send him back to that. And Aquaman's like, nah, Hercules doesn't deserve that, but we need to get rid of him somehow until I can figure out what to do with him. So at this point, Aquaman is tackled down a mountain by Hercules, and we have him trying to like tell Hercules like, hey man, you were a hero. Remember who you are. Come on, get back to it. But then the entire mountain just starts like rock sliding down onto them. So Aquaman's like, all right, this is going to hurt. Meanwhile, we cut down to Atlantis, where Mera is taking the responsibilities of the throne, and she's examining this fault line that has come up, and she's just like, all right, well, it goes pretty far, this is a problem, might have to deal with that, when all of a sudden the dude driving her, like, I mean, it's a beluga whale / porpoise or something, but he gets shot, and turns out it's a bunch of other Atlanteans there, and they're all here for an assassination attempt. They're like, Mera, you are a Zebellian, you are not Atlantean, you are not the rightful heir of the throne, neither is Arthur, so have at ye. And they start firing harpoons at her, and she flips them around, sends them back at the people. A few more of them are like, all right, you may be able to control the water, but you still need to breathe. And they let go some canisters that seem to like poison the water to some extent, where she's unable to breathe. They're all wearing masks, so they're fine. But she inhales it without thinking, and it looks like she's choking to death. And they're about to fire another harpoon at her, when all of a sudden, another person swoops in, grabs Mera, gets her out of the cloud. And this person goes back in. We see it's obviously a female Atlantean of some sort. And she immediately just swoops in and rips off the other people's masks. So they are forced to breathe in the poison, and they end up dying. And as Mera comes to, she's just like, oh, thank you. Wait a minute. I recognize your helmet as one of the drift forces. And turns out that this is sister of King Orm Ocean Master Tula. And she's like, yeah, no, there have been assassination like rumors for a while now. Obviously, they were going to make their way back to the sister of the people that they believe is the rightful king. So yeah, I'm here. So then we go back up to the mountain where Aquaman is. Hercules pulls his way out, and he's looking around. He is like totally brain dead. He's just looking up to the skies like, Father, why, Zeus? He looks over at Aquaman, and the voices in his head are basically saying like, he used you as a shield from the mountain. He doesn't care about you. Kill him, drown him, strangle him. And as Hercules is like strangling Aquaman, Aquaman looks over to the nearby like puddle, I guess it's the sea, And he's like, no, please, Hercules, don't drown me. I'm afraid of being drowned. And Hercules is like, all the voices in his head are like, yes, drown him, do it. So Hercules starts drowning him. And Aquaman like puts up a play fight, and he's like, okay, but seriously, Atlanteans can breathe water now, and also check out what else I can do. And he punches Hercules deep out into the sea. And as Hercules starts like coming down into the water, Aquaman keeps on swimming around super fast, throwing punches. Hercules can't do pretty much anything about it. The voices in the head are just like, oh God, it must be like an agent of Poseidon or something. We got to get out of this water. And as he tries to swim up, Aquaman summons a giant squid to drag Hercules down even further. He throws a few more punches, and he's like, all right, I don't think that a demigod can drown, but I'm not going to like risk it or anything like that. So we see him grab Hercules, bring him back up to the shore. Dr. Evans has rechanged the destination of the portal, and he's like, look, I'm like 100% sure that it says labyrinth, so let's try that. So they put back in the trident. It opens up a portal to a labyrinth, and Hercules is like, no, don't, please. And Aquaman's like, sorry, man, got to do it right now. And he throws down Hercules in there, and he's like, look, I'm going to help him. I'm going to find a way to make that work, but like, I just needed him out for a while. So they close up the portal again. Aquaman does a FaceTime call over to Mera in like the royal chambers or whatever. And she's like, hey, did you deal with your missing item thing? Not wanting to reveal it to the council behind her. And he's like, yeah, no, we got that all settled. No big deal. And the council's just like, okay. She's about to tell him about the assassination attempt. He's going to get super pissed, and we're all going to be put in the hospital and then fired because the council should be able to deal with that, and we didn't. So Mayor's just like, all right, by the way, algae bloom thing happened. That's probably a superhero. You should check in with Swamp Thing. And he's just like, right, will do. So Mera turns around, hangs up the phone, and is just like, all right, look, I didn't tell my husband about the security thing of his assassination, so how about my security council's actually, helping me out now? Let's deal with that. And we see Tula steps up behind and just like, yeah, sounds like a plan. So meanwhile, back on the surface world, Aquaman uses Just League Communicator, calls up Wonder Woman, and says like, hey, just want to let you know, Hercules, that's your half brother, right? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, we need to deal with that in an annual. So Aquaman annual, dealing with that whenever that happens, because it's not on the 5th week of this month. Meanwhile, Swamp Thing's going to be the next thing we deal with over in there. So yeah, overall, that's all going on. I like this issue. I think it's fine. It's just a nice little, we've been continuing on with the Triton thing as a background. This is more of just a 2-issue, small little mini arc, but it's been set up. That's the thing that I like what Jeff Parker's doing, is that he's setting up things in earlier arcs. And it's not a thing where he sets it up and then just, you forget about it for 7 issues and then he's just like, remember this? He sets it up and then he keeps on reminding you each issue of this is a thing, don't forget it, until finally we get to the development of it. I like that storytelling development. It's doing a good job there. I'm still not sure what the larger point of the run is yet. I'm not sure where we're going with it in terms of themes, but as it stands now, it's just a fun time, and I'm liking the development of Mera here in the royal role. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one I'll give it a 7.5. I think my main criticism is some of the art. I can't tell you exactly who, because there are 2 artists here, but some of the art's just a little bit shaky for me, but everything else is pretty all right. The Flash number 30, written by Van Jensen and Robert Venditti, art by Brett Booth. So, start of a new run here. We open up 5 years from now in Central City, and we have Iris is being loaded up on a gurney. Flash is freaking out, and I believe it's the police captain's just like, hey, look, where were you? The kid is also in trouble. And he's like, what kid? And it turns out that there is a teenager who flatlined nearby, and so Flash runs off and sees this kid who it looks like it was a car accident, and he is dead. And the police captain shouts out well, where were you, Flash? Why weren't you here? So we cut back to now being just after Forever Evil has happened, and Central City is messed up, man. So Barry is asleep at his desk, and Patty walks in saying, like, hey, you're late, you got a psychiatrist thing going on today. And Barry starts making, like, excuses for it. He's just like, oh, yeah, it's because... And Patty just immediately starts naming them off before he's even able to say anything. So, meanwhile, she brings out a little wrapped gift. He unwraps it. Turns out it's a watch. And she's like, there. Now you can always make sure you're on time because that's synced to the time at the station. So, there you go. And basically, he kind of breaks down. He's like, look, not going to the appointment is also kind of a thing where, you know, it's everyone else had to deal with the crime syndicate because I wasn't there. Like, I wasn't able to stop them. I was trapped and whatnot, and that kind of comes back to hit me hard. And Patty basically says, like, you're not the savior of the universe. You can't solve everything. So, yeah, don't worry about it. It's not something that's going to be, like, it happened, so be it, move on. And Patty notices the time and says, all right, go to your appointment or else it'll be months before you can get in. And all these appointments are mandatory for them to continue to be on the force. So we see Barry sitting in the waiting room. Forrest comes out and he's yelling about the psychiatrist, be like, oh yeah, I gave her a talking to, all this new age nonsense. Who cares? So he heads off, wishing Barry good luck, hoping that he is able to get by the psych eval. And as he gets into the room, we meet Dr. Janice, who basically is like, all right, here's your entire history. Your mom died. Your father may have been the killer, blah, blah, blah. You also have a history of being late. But all that is not what we're here for. I'm just concerned about the past, like, couple months. How have you been handling things? And he's just like, oh, good. Yeah, you know, I've got a lot to do. And he's like, yeah, everybody's busy. But, like, how are you handling things? And she basically breaks down and says, like, look, we're doing this because any future case that you're on, if you're not cleared for a psych eval, the defendant's lawyers can basically say, hey, Forever Evil made this guy crazy. We can't rely on his evidence. So we're just clearing off that that's the case. And she says, like, yeah, you know, it's affected all the cops here. They hate seeing their city torn apart. And he's like, yeah, no, but, like, I should have done more. And as she's looking down in her notebook saying, like, oh, yeah, you've lived in Central City all your life, we see Barry doing his Flash thing where he just runs out of the room, does a whole bunch of stuff outside to, like, help clean up the city, and then runs back in when she's not looking. And he keeps on doing this. So we keep on seeing, like, in between her looking down, looking away, leaving the room temporarily, he runs around the city doing whatever he can. We see a kid has lost their dog, and so he picks up a flyer. He makes his way through a park. He sees the forest that was actually, like, breaking down in the park. He's actually upset about how many people, like, died. Meanwhile, the psychiatrist asks Barry a question, so he sits down for a while, and he's just like, yeah, no, I felt like I wasn't around in Central City. I just ran, and I ran away, and I, like, wasn't able to do anything, but, like, I also felt so trapped, you know, like, I should have been doing more. And, like, I failed this city. I could have saved so many lives. I could have done so much. And she says the same thing that Patty said, just be like, yeah, no, what are you going to do? Punch out Grodd? We're just normal human beings. We're not capable of doing things that, like, those godlike superheroes can do. And so Barry continues running. We see that a construction crew is trying to fix, like, a hole in a wall and to, like, iron heights. And Barry just comes in and seals it up as, like, super quick with, like, bricks and stuff like that. And some of the construction workers are happy, but some of them are like, hey, Flash, where the hell were you when we needed you? So Flash ends up finding the little kid's dog, drops it off in front of Forrest, and then keeps on running. We see that a bridge is collapsing, and Barry just runs in, grabs all the people out of the cars, and then sets them down safe, and it's just like, sorry, got to keep going. And so he makes his way back to the psychiatrist's office, and she's like, all right, well, you know, we're finishing up here. This is basically all I need to know. We cut aside to Forrest delivering the dog, and Barry basically saying, like, look, I can make a difference. When the next disaster comes, I want to help people. And it's that side of things. But then the doctor says, like, look, you're not crazy, so I feel safe reinstating you, but you may not be crazy, but you do have to deal with this idea that you can save everybody, that you are able to be in all those places. So I want to keep on meeting up with you every couple of weeks. So Barry goes down, he packs up his stuff, and Patty's like, oh yeah, no, I can go ahead and get reassigned back to the lab. We're going back to the status quo. I don't have to stay down here in cold cases. And Barry checks his watch that he got, compares to the time, and somehow he lost 2 minutes. 2 minutes in there. His clock's not late. It's early. It's now 1:13, whereas the station says 1:15. And just like, oh, well, that's weird. Maybe we should get rid of the watch. And he jokes to Patty. But then we cut over to the watch again, ticking in the future, 20 years from now. Barry, now in a blue suit, is just distraught. He's got newspapers up everywhere, and he's like, 2 years, 8 months, and he's just listing off all this time that he lost. And he says, I miss so much, but I understand where it went wrong, and I promise I'm going to fix it. I promise you, Wally, as we look at the flyer and see that it was Wally who was killed in a car accident. So, yeah. Future Barry's coming back to fix the things because screw the time stream. We know the story. This story's been adapted several times. I'm cool with it. I'm fine with it. I will say the Brett Booth art is not doing this any favors. I don't feel like that needs... I'll say it here once, and unless there's an egregious example over the course of the next few arcs, I'll leave it at that. But, I mean, this is just a setup issue. It's just setting up the core themes. It's saying Barry feels like he can be everywhere all the time. Nothing bad needs to happen in Central City as long as he's alive. But clearly that's not the case, and a thing that he's going to have to learn. So, yeah, overall fine issue. I probably, because of the art, would drop it an extra point or so. So I'm going to say it's a 6.5. Otherwise, it probably would have been a bit higher. But, yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing how this stuff continues forward. I know this isn't the best time in the Flash run. There is a lot of people who are against this, but I'm at least trying to go in with an open mind. We'll see how well that works out for me. All-Star Western number 30, written by Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Staz Johnson. So last issue, Gina died. Just died. Like, yeah. So this issue picks up and Jonah is literally digging a grave, as the narration is saying, like, how many lovers must one man bury? Also, did Jonah mess up the time stream significantly? He thinks to himself as he leaves a little cross, buries his ex, and well, I guess ex is a harsh term, but you get the point, and goes off into the sunset. And so he rides into town at night, he stops in at a hotel, and he's like, hey, you got a room? And he's just like, yeah, are you planning on staying for a while? And he's just like, I mean, start with the night and then see where we go from there. And he's like, all right, well, it's going to be 3, he says skins, I assume that means the currency. Meanwhile, outside, they see a man running through the streets, just yelling and screaming, saying like, oh God, she's coming, please help me. And as he stumbles down one last time, he gets shot through the chest and the back and falls down dead. And Jonah lights up a cigar and he's like, all right, my kind of town. So walking into town, we see a figure with long hair, a big cowboy hat on, steps up and reaches into the man's pocket and pulls out a key. And it turns out this is Tallulah Black. And so Jonah steps up a little bit closer. Tallulah's like, I can smell your cigar, man. Don't come any closer. And Jonah's like, oh, yeah, Tallulah, you're always in a bad mood. She's like, all right, you know who I am. How about you step forward into the light to see who you are? And she pulls a gun on him. And they just go back and forth for a while where Tallulah says, like, oh, yeah, come again? And he's like, yeah, you usually do with me. And she's just like, all right, look, come into the light. Let me see who you are. And so Jonah does. And, of course, at this point, his face is all fixed up. And she's just like, I can't believe it. Jonah never told me that he had a brother. And it's like, yeah, it's me. It's Jonah. It's a long story. And they continue their conversation. I will get to it. But throughout this entire rest of the scene, a drunk guy stumbles across the dead body and is just like looking around and keeps on going like, guys, there's a dead body here. Anybody care about this? So Jonah basically says, like, look, it's a long story, but, like, buy me a drink and I'll tell it to you. And she's like, no, I don't know who you are, because there's no way that you could be Jonah Hex. No one could fix that ugly of a face into what you got now. And he's like, trust me, it can happen, but, like, that's not the case. And so Jonah recaps the time that he met Tallulah, like what was going on there. And she's like, your Hex could have told you about that. And she's like, all right, well, what about the mole on your? And she's like, all right, hold on. Don't say another word about that. But she's still not believing. But she's like, all right, fine, whatever. Say your story. And he's like, it's a bit of a long story. I really could use a drink. And she's like, okay, Jonah's never told a story that's been long enough to need a drink. So that's a point against you. And he's just like, look, it's hard to believe. Seriously, we need to talk inside. And Tallulah basically loses interest. She's like, all right, clearly you don't have a story. I'm out. I'm leaving. And Jonah's like, look, we got history. I taught you how to shoot so you could get revenge on the people who killed your family. And Tallulah's like, all right, let's go get that drink. So they go inside, and Tallulah's like, okay, you say it's the future? And he's like, yeah, well, no, I'm back here, and I don't have anything to my name, so what do we got for local bounties? And Tallulah pulls out the key and says, I got something better than the bounty. And he asks what it opens, and then all of a sudden there's guns pulled all around them as it says that the key opens a grave for the both of them. So, yeah, that's that. It's a much shorter issue because it's actually kind of split into two halves. The second half is a backup story about, I believe it's Madam 44. I will get to that at some other point. But, no, I'm still a bit hung up on how mean-spirited it was that they killed Gina. Like, don't get me wrong. I like the fact we've got Tallulah back. It works. It's fine. But, like, I don't know. It seems like really, really weird, the fact that they brought her back to the past just so they could kill. It feels like they fridged her, you know? Like, this is done. It's not even done for character development of Jonah. It doesn't seem like he cares anymore. It's like the opening narration says, like, oh, I burying her, but, like, did I mess up the timeline by bringing a future girl here? Is that going to, like, screw something up? He doesn't seem to care at all. So, yeah, no, it's just a bit weird to me. This is a good enough setup for any whatever story. We got a MacGuffin. We got a key that opens up something that everybody wants. Whatever. Oh, we'll get to it. Justice for Gina, man, you know? I'm going to give it a 6. I'll give it a 7. It's, honestly, it's shorter, which is why I was thinking 6.5, but I'm at least interested. It would have gotten a hell of a lot more if they treated Gina with some respect, though, you know? Teen Titans number 30, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Tyler Kirkham. So last issue, the group who was stuck in the future, Raven, Cassie, and Tim, made their way back to the past, and they discovered that Bunker and Beast Boy were fighting against a bunch of shadow demons from like an arc and a half ago. So, Raven is being attacked by the shadow demons, and Beast Boy comes in as an armadillo to help fight them off. We see that the rest of the group is also in there. Red Robin, Bunker, Wonder Girl. Turns out the villains' names are The Light and The Way, and they are brothers who can only exist together and blah, 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 blah. Seriously, does not matter at all. So they continue fighting against them, and then Raven gets hit, and she feels pain, and she's like, wait a minute, hold on. I am protected by Trigon. How in the hell do I feel pain? That doesn't make sense, unless traveling backward through time severed my connection to Trigon. And she just starts, like, smiling and cheering, and she's like, I'm free! And she blows away a bunch of shadow demons. Beast Boy comes up and gives her a hug, and she's like, okay, despite being away from Trigon, I'm still not a hugging person. And he's like, oh, Raven, always the trickster. So the Light and the Way just start yelling, just like, oh, the whole reason we came here was to get Solstice. We need Solstice because she's the only way that we can survive. And then the other brother's like, are you talking to me? And he's like, no, I'm not talking to you. Clearly I'm talking to, why would you think I'm talking to you? So they start throwing off like shadow darts at the Titans, and Robin's like, well, Solstice isn't here, so clearly they're just going to die off eventually. Let's just outpace them, you know? And so Bunker's got a force field up to try to stop all the darts. But meanwhile, they're like, well, hold on. If they last much longer, we're not going to be able to outpace them. We need a miracle here. And a miracle they goddamn got. They coming up the side of the boat is a hand where it, as they're firing their shot, they say, okay, they're not fighting back. Let's use our powers together. It puts us at more risk, but we can do it. And so they fire an extra strong shot. It looks like it's going to break through Bunker's thing. And then all of a sudden, the hand coming up off the side of the boat slashes one of them, and then the other one starts fading away. And so their power is gone. And it's like, wait a minute, hold on. Who did that? And standing in front of them is Skitter. Do you remember Skitter from like the culling? And she just disappeared? Well, golly gee, if we got a story here. So Bunker gives her a big hug and just like, Skitter, you're alive. That's incredible. We thought you just like left or died or whatever. And Raven's like, should I scan her? Like, I don't know this woman. He's like, no, she's cool. She's good. Also, she's a lot more coherent and in control of her powers than before. Before she just like made a bunch of grumbly noises. So then back when Simon was a villain, there was a group that came in and was like against the Teen Titans, and they showed up and like shamed the Titans for causing such destruction to the city. They open up a portal and just pop right through again with a bunch of tanks and whatnot. And so the Titans are ready for a fight. Just be like, oh yeah, you said that we'd be back as enemies, so we're ready to fight. But it turns out that the leader of this group is the mother of Celine, a.k.a. Skitter. And she's just like, yeah, no, we won't fire. I don't want my daughter caught in the crossfire. She says like, yeah, come on, baby girl, let's go back home. And she's just like, no, I gotta stay here. Like, I don't want to leave my friends. And so the person in charge of this group, who doesn't have a name, which makes it very hard to talk about, is basically like, all right, because my daughter wants to be part of you, you guys are practically family, therefore we won't attack you. And the Titans are like, same in reverse. Bye. So that's just done with. And then they go back through the portal. Celine is like, all right, you want to know what happened to me? You want to know why I just disappeared in the middle of the story? First, I'm going to give you my backstory. And so she has apparently this backstory, which I swear to God we got her backstory before, but here's a different one. She was like an honor student. She was an intern at Star Labs. One night she invented a thing that could speak through dimensions. A portal opened up and this big bug creature attacked her and like enslaved her for their army. But because her will was so indomitable, she fought against the slavers and then like kicked their asses back through. But she was already infected by their whatever, and she wasn't able to fight against it. So by the time the Titans got to her, she was like, mad and skittery and whatnot. So the culling happened, and turns out the person who like grabbed Skitter was her mother, who found her again, basically got her into rehab in order to control this parasite. And so now she's in control of her powers. And she's like, yeah, I've just been living in LA and with my like father and sister. So that's why I'm back now. And they're just like, all right, so cool. Can we be part of the Teen Titans again? And Red Robin's like, ooh, bad news. This is the last issue. We're not going to be Titans anymore. And as he's saying that, a voice behind him says like, really? Well, that sucks. And they look up, and it's Grimm, who is the villain from, like, issue 4. And he's like, I have showed up to get my revenge on you, Titans, and now you're not even Titans anymore? Well, I may as well even just tell you where I planted the bomb. And it's like, wait a minute, there's a bomb? And then Beast Boy turns into a rhino and knocks out Grimm to the point where he's not able to tell them like where the bomb is, and it's just like, ah, crap. All right, Raven, could you read his mind? And she's like, yeah, sure. The bomb's on the boat and it's going to go off right now. And then all of a sudden there's an explosion and Bunker is defending them from it. Cut to, we have the planet that Solstice and Kid Flash were sent to. Kid Flash still has his speed ability. Solstice, however, has nothing. They're being attacked by a giant monster because it's a prison planet. And Big Monster's like, fresh meat, I can't wait, and attacking Solstice. Kid Flash comes in and starts like stabbing the guy 1,000,000 times in a second. And he's like, I told you, Solstice, it's kill or be killed out here. We can't have our morals get in the way anymore. And she's like, I know, you're right, but is this our life now? And he's like, it won't be forever, just for now. We're gonna get up there and we're gonna get back. And we see a bunch of people riding dragons and like flying over this prison planet. And that's it. Like there's an annual. That's the explosion on the boat is what the annual is going to pick up from. What's happening on Takron, Galtos, I don't know. Whether or not we're even going to deal with that, I don't know. Why the hell did Skitter show back up? God damn it. I don't understand. Like, okay, if you're in your last issue for your series, I understand it doing like a little best of thing where it's like, look at all the things we went through and like, let's revisit some stuff from the beginning. And like Skitter and Grimm, yeah, no, that's beginning. Trust me on that. But like, this is not the final issue. You ended it on a cliffhanger for the team where their boat's exploding. And then you're going to wrap it up in the annual. So like, what is the point of just doing this? I don't... Add on top of it, there's a massively long backup in this issue. I will get to that eventually, where it's, hey, what did Beast Boy and Bunker get up to in the meantime? I don't care. I want to make that clear. I don't care. But I'll get to it. So overall, I mean, it's a crap issue. Like, this issue is reminding me of things I was hoping to forget, just over and over and over again. So good on ya. You did it, Lobdell. Overall, I'm going to put this at a 4.5. It's not like functionally awful, but like I just hated every second of it. So 4.5 seems reasonable, beneath the little average threshold, and definitely not gaining any favor with me. So check out the annual whenever that comes out. Justice League Dark number 30, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Andre Guinaldo. So last issue was the end of the Blight story arc. Zatanna got control of the House of Mystery, and her and Constantine kind of just split, like they're no longer speaking. So we open in New York City, where Constantine is drinking heavily, as he always does. But he's in a bar, he calls out for another drink. Waitress brings over one, saying like, oh, hey, I just started my shift. What's a handsome man like you doing in here? And he's just like, oh, hey, I'm John Constantine. I just recently got over a girl, so what are you doing tonight? And the waitress leans in, just being like, oh, well, I could think of a few things. And then she headbutts John as hard as he can, and she just, like, he pushes her away. She's like, what the hell's the matter with you? So then the bar staff just like, hey, you can't shove our waitress. But she's like, don't worry about it. And she picks up John by the collar, throws him through a solid door, and John's like, oh, okay, all right. Dead man, are you possessing this poor woman? And so Dead Man comes up being like, yep, it's me. If you were drunk, or if you were less drunk, you would have noticed a hell of a lot sooner. And so Constantine's like, what, is this revenge for me trapping you in Sea King's body during the last plot? And he's like, you know what? I thought I had like a lot of reasons for coming here, but you're just such a pathetic wreck yourself. I don't even need to show up. I'm out. Bye. And as he leaves, John is like calling him out, just being like, yeah, I'm not pathetic. You're pathetic. You suck. So John gets kicked out of the bar because he's yelling at the ceiling, as far as anyone can tell. And Dead Man makes his way back to the House of Mystery. And he's just like, yeah, well, it seemed like it was a good idea to go kick Constantine's ass, but I've decided against it because why not? So inside the House of Mystery, Zatanna is in a just massive like Roman bath looking area. And she's just super stressed out. She's trying to figure out how to recover from everything after Forever Evil Blight happened, and now that Constantine is out of her life, how to continue from there. But the House of Mystery made this route to try to help and let her relax. And so she's meditating a little bit when all of a sudden out of the bath comes Nightmare Nurse, aka Asa, who Zatanna's like, what are you doing in here? And she's like, oh, yeah, I like it here. And she's like, I thought you were only here for Constantine. I thought you and him were a thing. And she's like, Constantine? I mean, I've got a lot of lovers. I can do without him. But I could always use a little bit more. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And Zatanna basically asks, like, oh, well, why did you even, like, join the team? Why are you here? And she's like, oh, well, the world was sick and it could use a healer. And that's what I am. I'm a healer. And Zatanna thanks her, saying, like, oh, yeah, I know the team couldn't have done it without you, but no thanks on the whole lover thing. And she's just like, oh, well, you'll change your mind, or maybe, we'll see. So at that point, we see one of the mirrors in the Roman bath. All of a sudden, it has a woman in it dressed as like 1920s flapper sort of thing. She's screaming at the mirror, and then it just cracks, and then we don't get more of that. So elsewhere in the house, in this huge wide open vista, Deadman is trying to convince Frankenstein and Black Orchid to stay on the team. And Frankenstein's immediately just like, dude, I don't do team stuff. I'm a solitary creature. Like, thanks for helping get me out of that machine, but I think I've repaid that wholesale. Like, I'm out now. And every time Deadman pushes more, Frankenstein, like, gets angrier. He's just like, seriously? Stop it. And so Deadman then turns to Black Orchid and is just like, what about you? Any chance of you staying? And she's like, nah, after Blight and all that happened, like, I don't know who I am. I know nothing about my own identity. I just want to go, like, figure that out, And, like, starting my own life. Isn't that something you would want to do, Deadman? And he's like, I'm sorry, are you telling the dead guy to start a life? No, I can't do that. This is Just League Dark. Like, we can help people doing that. This is important. We should stick around with it. You know what? Screw this. I'm out. And as he starts to leave, all of a sudden there's a doorbell sound. He's like, does the House of Mystery have a doorbell? Who could be at the door to the House of Mystery? So everyone in the house, they open up doors to go out to the main foyer, and sitting out there is Null, the demon who served Constantine. Turns out he's actually binded to the house, so now he's serving Zatanna, but nobody's seen him for like months, and he's like, I've been here, I just keep to myself, like, whatever. So inside is now Constantine, flat drunk, and he's like, yeah, I was your boss, Null, get out of here. He's like, I serve Zatanna now. He's like, well, then let me see her, I want to see her. And all the other four members here, Nightmare Nurse, Black Orchid, Frankenstein, and Deadman, get in the way of Constantine. He just throws it down a huge magical spell and just like, oh, I'm going wherever I want. So Frankenstein gets up and he pulls out his sword and he just runs it through Constantine's chest. And he's surprised that it worked. He's like, I thought you would move or something. And Constantine's like, why? I can just phase it through a portal. Like, it's not even affecting me. And then he leans in next to Frankenstein's ear, says a single word, just whispers it. And it's enough to like send Frankenstein into a fit. And he's just like, yep, that's more than enough for you. So then Nightmare Nurse attacks with a firebolt. Constantine repels it and blasts her back. She hits a mirror, and once again in that mirror is that woman again screaming. So then Black Orchid sucker punches him from behind. And Constantine's like, you know what? I was always a little bit fond of you, Black Orchid. I wanted to get to know you better. But you know what? Let's get to know you real deep. And so she starts peeling away magically all of the like lies and stuff on top of her identity. And we see a man, a Japanese woman, an old, like dressed in a robe, and then a young girl. And then inside of her costume, we just see a blank light. And that's Constantine, as Black Orchid's recovering, just says like, yep, that's what I thought. Pretty on the inside, but empty underneath. So then Deadman jumps into Constantine's body and tries to control him. And just like, oh, you don't even know what it means to have friends. All you want is to control people. That's it, isn't it? And you don't even recognize that you're not even in control of yourself. And Constantine forces Deadman out of his body and says, I am never out of control. So at this point, Zatanna walks down the steps saying, like, enough. You want to see me? Here I am. Let's talk. And she takes him into the other room. He just wants 5 minutes. He's very sheepish about it. And they basically talk about, like, why did he abandon the team? And he's like, I did all of that. All of the Blight stuff was in order to get you back. And when I finally had you back, I thought that was it. We did it. And then stuff just kept happening. Like, we had to fight Faust, and then the Sons of Trigon started attacking us. And when it came to the Trigon stuff, I just realized I don't want this. I don't want to do this anymore. It's always going to be something more. And Zatanna calls him out saying, like, okay, but like, you had a demon that came out of you, personified itself as you, and made the ultimate sacrifice. Like, the fact that you couldn't even do that, do you understand why, like, it's so much crazier for me that the demon would do that? And she tries to say, like, you still have that inside of you. But he's like, look, no, I don't. That's not me. You always saw that in me, but that's just you wanting to see that in me. And Zatanna doubles down saying, like, no, if a demonic version of yourself is able to make that level of sacrifice, clearly you are capable of so much more. And he says, all right, regardless, the only good in me was you. Now that's over. So he summons up a bouquet of flowers, passes it to her, says, don't forget me, and leaves. And Zatanna just stands there for a while contemplating, like, all right, he's gone, he's out. She comes to terms with it, and she sets down the flowers and leads to, like, a conference room that only has herself, Deadman, and Nightmare Nurse in it. And she's like, all right, I don't even know if this counts as a league anymore. It might just be the Justice Collaboration Dark. And the Deadman makes the point of saying, we need more muscle. That's what's needed right now. So they summon in Swamp Thing, and Swamp Thing's like, hey, Constantine did this before. I will not have it from you, Zatanna. And she's like, totally fair. Just let me do my pitch, and then I swear I would never, ever do it again. But before the pitch can even begin, Nightmare Nurse just explodes into fire. And as she recovers from the fire, we see that her like tattoos and stuff she had on her face have burned away. She now looks completely human. And as she comes to Zatanna saying, like, Asa, are you okay? Are you all right? And she says, Asa, no, that's not me. My name is Alice. So apparently her name is Alice Winters. And we're going to learn her true identity of, like, who the hell is that? So yeah. Overall, good setup to the new status quo. I'm sure Constantine will be back. There's no goddamn way that he's staying away from this team for more than, like, 2 issues. But we'll see how long that manages to hold and what the new status quo is once he gets back. So, overall, solid issue. Give it like a... I'll give it a 7.5. I find myself more hopeful for it than not. I want to see how things turn out. Batman Eternal number 3, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fox, Lehman, and Seeley, art by Jason Fabok. So this issue opens up with a young woman named Stephanie Brown. And Stephanie is walking through Gotham City. She's on the phone with her mom. Apparently she left something at her dad's house, and she just wants to go over and get it real quick. Her mom, not fond of this idea because Gotham, is arguing with her, and she's like, don't worry about it. I'll be fine. I'll be right back. So she gets to her dad's house. She tries to open the door. It's locked. She's like, all right, well, I know an open window I can get through. So she climbs up on some shelves and gets in. And as she enters, she finds a group of 4 costumed supervillains sitting around his kitchen table, himself being one of them. He is Clue Master. And the other ones don't get named. I think one of them is like Signal Man or something. And Stephanie's just like, hey, Dad, what's going on? Why are you dressed like that? What's happening? And then someone unseen knocks out Stephanie from behind and says, oh, that's not for you to know. So over at GCPD, we have Bullock thinking like, yeah, everything's about to go wrong. Like, this is about to get so much worse. And then Forbes comes up and just like, what do you mean worse? Gordon's in jail. Everything's about to get great. And that's where Maggie Sawyer comes up saying, hey, Forbes, shut your damn mouth and get back to work. So Forbes and Maggie go off, and Bullock's talking to one of the officers and just like, yeah, I think that Maggie's going to get the commissioner tap because that's what we need right now. Someone that's not like petty like that. By the way, have you seen the new kid, Jason Bard, where he's at? So meanwhile, Jason is down talking to Gordon in a cell. And he's like, oh, are you all right, Commissioner? Is there anything I could do for you? And he's like, kid, don't, like, I'm sorry you would be the one to arrest me. I'm sure you're going to get some sort of a reputation for being the person who arrested the commissioner on his first day. But, like, trust me, it's going to be all right for you. And he's like, no, I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about you. I'm going to find the evidence. I'm going to figure out, like, what happened to make sure that you get out of it. And he's like, dude, other people are working on that. Trust me. Wink, wink, Batman. But, yeah, no, all the evidence says that I fired the gun. Don't waste your time with that. Like, just do your job. And he's like, oh, I intend to. So we go to the Iceberg Casino where someone's like there's a waitress whose brother is like cheating at the card games or whatnot, and the waitress is like, oh, please don't hurt him, it was my idea, I'm the one who told him about that. And he's just like, what do you mean hurt him? I already fed him to some elephant seals like 30 minutes ago. Screw him, he's dead. And that's when Batman busts down the door, and the waitress runs out, and Batman's like, hey, Cobblepot, and immediately like picks him up, sends him down into a table. He tries to make some like conversation, and Batman's like, enough, tell me what you know about Carmine Falcone. He's like, what do you mean Falcone? I ran him out of town years ago, you remember that? Screw that, this city belongs to me now, he doesn't have any power at all. And that's where Batman's like, you swear to God you know nothing about Falcone. And it's just like, no, why would I know anything about Falcone? He's gone. It's like, okay, well, he's back now. And Penguin immediately starts sweating. He's like, no, that's not possible. I would have known if he came back. That's not cool. And Batman's like, if I find out you guys are working together. And Penguin's like, dude, I got bigger problems if you find out that if he's actually back. Like, seriously, problems. So we go to Gotham City Hall. Falcone's hanging out with the mayor. They bring in Forbes. And immediately Falcone's like, yeah, Forbes, you think you're one of the good guys? And he's like, I know I am. I remember a time in Gotham where you guys ran things and we just looked the other way. And that's how we got kickbacks on that. Everything went smoothly. And I am personally happy to get back to that idea. And Falcone's like, Forbes is a good guy, Mayor. Maybe we should give him a little reward for being so loyal. And he points out basically saying, like, what would you say if the criminal underworld made a little bit of trouble over the next few weeks? And Forbes is like, well, I think the police have better things to do right now. And Falcone's like, that's a good answer. So down in the Batcave, Batman's piecing together everything he has about the guy who Gordon was chasing down. It was a low-level guy for Falcone's men. He was completely gone out of the system, and then all of a sudden he just shows back up in Gotham as a henchman for Professor Pig for like a few hours. It clearly is not the main thing. It's some sort of a distraction. And also he's trying to figure out, like, okay, what made Gordon see that there was a gun in his hand? There's something, and like, why in that exact place? Everything had to be planned perfectly here to make Gordon fire that gun in that exact shot. And Alfred like plays devil's advocate. He's like, maybe this, maybe that. Maybe Gordon is just, addicted to nicotine. He didn't have his hit that night. He's like, no. It's too much of a coincidence. I got to figure that out. So all of a sudden the alarms start going off. It turns out Penguin's weapons caches are being hit on the west side of Gotham. And so Batman's like, all right, it's starting. Falcone versus Penguin. Meanwhile, back at Cluemaster's home, they're talking about what they're going to do about Stephanie. And it's just like, look, Cluemaster, she's seen too much. We can't risk our plan being seen. We got to get rid of her. And Cluemaster's like, I don't have a problem with that. Yeah, no problem. So he pulls out a gun. Stephanie is conscious again. She's like, no, please, Daddy, you can't do this. And he's just like, you were always a disappointment. And he goes to pull the trigger, but Stephanie hits a gas canister on his belt and uses the distraction to bolt out of the house and escape. And she just starts running down the street as shots are being fired after her. So meanwhile, elsewhere in Gotham, Batman's taken out a bunch of goons who were attacking Penguin's weapons cache, and he grabs one of them, snaps his arm, just being like, all right, tell me what you need to know about, what I need to know about Falcone. And he's just like, oh, you think the police are coming? You think they're going to help you out, rounding us all up? The Falcone knew what to do here. He knew that you would be coming after us. He's got this whole thing planned through now. So he gets a signal that another cache is being hit on the opposite side of town, and this is the big move. Everything's happening all at once. So Penguin's talking to his like regular group of villains, like Mr. Combustible and Mr. Mosaic and all that. And as soon as he starts the meeting, Guy busts in and tells Penguin that all of his weapons caches are getting hit. So he's like, all right, everybody, I'm going to need all your men. I'm going to need them now. War's going on in Gotham. So then at the GCPD, Maggie's get suited up in bulletproof vest, tells Bullock to do the same, saying, hey, there's gang stuff going on. It's big. We got to get going. But the voice off panel says, you guys aren't going anywhere. So Batman is trying to get in contact with GCPD, trying to figure out, like, why aren't they responding to all these calls? And Alfred points out they are being canceled. All emergency calls to all these locations are getting canceled right now. He's like, what the hell's going on here? So we cut back over to the GCPD, Forbes is the one who was saying that no one's going anywhere. And Maggie's like, want to bet, man? I'm still your superior. And I say, we're going after this gang stuff now. Enter Mayor Haiti, who comes in saying, hey, just wanted everyone to know Forbes is the new acting commissioner. Okay, bye. And he just leaves. And immediately Maggie's just like, okay, so we're going to go do our jobs now regardless. And Forbes is like, no, I decide what your job is. And I think priority number one is no longer all of this like gang stuff. They can sort out their own things. We got a bigger target. And Jason Bard's like, you mean Professor Pig? He was running around. It's like, no, not Professor Pig, you stupid idiot. No, we're going after the thing that's caused all the problems ever since 0 year. And he wipes off the whiteboard and draws in a big bat symbol. And he says, our war on Batman begins tonight. And then a last little page here, we got Stephanie Brown. She's cowering in the corner of an alley. And she's called up her mom and she's like, something big is going on, Mom, and I think I'm the only person in Gotham who knows, and my dad is trying to kill me. Please pick up. So that's issue 3. As much as I said issue 1 was the big inciting incident, issue 2 was just moving the pieces around, letting us know what's going on. Issue 3 feels like more of the pieces going on, but we're doing the big moves now. We're starting the plot. We're saying, all right, Falcone's in town, attacking the Penguin. GCPD is now in their pockets. It's Batman all on his own here. I'm down for it. I'm excited. Jason Fabok's art's fantastic. And of course, Stephanie Brown, fan favorite. Can't not include her in a recap as to why this issue's good. So yeah, all in all, I give this one, honestly, I'd probably give it an 8.5. I think it's a solid issue. I don't see much wrong with it at all, and it's building up the tension in a way I know is unsustainable for 52 straight issues, but I'm enjoying it while it lasts. So yeah, we'll see what more comes out of this and how all the dominoes are going to fall. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this April 23rd, 2014. Next week's the 5th week. Again, I want to kind of just wrap this up, make it quick, because I am very tired, and I do not want to continue to do this. So, yeah, 5th week next week. We got a bunch of annuals. We got Batman Eternal. That's still a thing. Well, I guess I'll read off the whole list. Why not? So in terms of annuals, we got Batgirl, Batwoman, which is the wrap-up to the previous writer's arc. That was left on a cliffhanger in issue, like, I want to say 26 or so. This is finally the conclusion of that. Green Lantern New Guardians is getting an annual, and Flash is getting an annual. Additionally, we have the weekly of Batman Eternal. There is the one-shot concluding the Forever Evil Arkham War story, which is Forever Evil Aftermath Batman vs. Bane. And then there is New 52, Futures End number 0. That is a free comic book day issue, and I'm just going to be covering it on that week because starting after that, it's our second weekly. Yep, 2 weeklies. I love it. It's so much fun. So yeah, that's all coming next week. There may be backups. As I tend to do on 5th weeks, I talk about backup stories, but I'll be honest with you, I've looked through. I'm not sure if any of them are like ready to be done yet. There was one in All-Star Western this week that is part 1 of 3. I'm just going to wait till that's done and then talk about it. And then I don't think there's like anything else. I'll double check. There might be something, but I don't think so. So it might be a bit of a shorter episode. Regardless, I'd rather this one were a shorter episode, so I'm just going to go ahead and wrap that up. Hey, you. Yes, you. Do you have any thoughts on the comics I talked about this week, last week, any week at all? Go ahead and leave those in the comments down below, or visit us on a social media website, such as Discord, or Reddit, or Patreon. I know that half of those aren't actually social media, but I have no better way to describe them. So check those out. Those links are in the description and or on screen, but that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, consuming this podcast. However you do, be sure to tune in next week and give this episode like a thumbs up or an extra view, or share it with like your friends and family. Show it to the president of whatever country you're in. I'm sure he'd enjoy it. Specifically this episode. Don't backdate it. Don't go back to episode 0 and then say, watch this from the beginning. Tell him to jump in here, because that makes the most sense. I'm very tired. So I'm going to stop talking. Thank you very much. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.